Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
You're watching.
We're watching. You're watching Fanboy.
Fanboy. Fanboy.
Fanboy.
Fanboy.
Fanboy, etc.
Fanboy Nation.
Dot. I assume Tom.
Making its South Texas premiere at the San Antonio Film Festival during their 35th anniversary on Wednesday, July 23rd at 3 p.m., we are talking to Chris Hansen and Ross Ruediger of the documentary for all Whovians, all Whovians in inDoctornated. Gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to talk to the both of you.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much for having us. We're honored.
Oh, absolutely. So I will tell you the same exact thing I told Matthew Jacobs when I interviewed him for his documentary of Doctor Who Am I?
Mm-hmm.
I am not a Whovian. I don't understand the show. It's never been my cup of tea, but I love documentaries and I love how certain properties affect people's lives.
Yeah.
And your documentary gives me an appreciation of the series that I didn't have prior to. So thank you for that, because I am huge on documentaries, and it did exactly what Trekkies did for me. I wasn't a big Star Trek fan at the time, saw Trekkies, thought I'd give it a shot. So thank you for making a documentary like this and featuring the people that you did, because it's three different unique stories in how it affected their lives. And I even sent Matthew a message saying that his doctor is finally being praised, especially by Brian in your documentary.
Yes.
We know Matthew. I know Matthew. We were at 2 years ago. He was premiering, not premiering, but screening Doctor Who Am I at Chicago TARDIS, while we, that same weekend, were debuting the first 30 minutes of our movie. I love Matthew. He's a great guy.
Yeah. No, he's incredible. He's quite genuine, quite friendly, and if anyone gets a chance to meet him, I highly recommend it. Yeah. So take us through the initial process of doing this. I mean, you saw his documentary, you shot your first 30 minutes, or at least revealed your first 30 minutes. You started pre-COVID and then had to complete the documentary following the pandemic. What was the initial idea to follow three Whovians in this regard? And what got you into Doctor Who to begin with? So let's start with what got you into Doctor Who, followed by the documentary.
Ross, do you want to start?
I've been a Doctor Who fan since I was 13 years old, watching on KETC in St. Louis, Missouri, where I grew up outside of St. Louis. Tom Baker was my first doctor. It became an obsession very quickly for me, and never really stopped being an obsession for me. So all these years went by, and I had done lots of criticism. I'd done a lot of, especially when the news series came back, I'd done hundreds and hundreds of articles, Blu-ray reviews, episode recaps. I'd done all kinds of stuff, and even after all of that, I just didn't feel like I had said what I wanted to say about Doctor Who. And I had this idea where I thought, rather than like going to a convention and interviewing lots of different people for a few minutes at a time, I thought it would be more interesting to try to find what I thought were the very best Doctor Who fans and spend time getting to know their entire lives and maybe how the show had affected them. And of course, the process to finding those three people was a process in and of itself. You know, we didn't just find them overnight. So, Chris.
Yeah. So, I've been a Doctor Who fan since childhood. And sitting, my water bottle is sitting on my Tom Baker coaster, because that was my doctor, growing up, and watching on Georgia Public Television with my brother in our in his bedroom, where we had a small TV. And I just, I'm one of those fans who is like, childhood fan, and then kind of went away from it for a while, and then of course they brought it back in 2005, and I was like, curious to see what it was now, and I just got sucked right back in the minute it came out with the first season in 2005 on, I think it was on Sci-Fi Network back then in America, and
Right.
and then David Tennant, kind of took it and ran with it when he became the Doctor. So I had, in those years become a filmmaker, and not primarily a documentarian. I make narrative films, but I've done some documentary work, and I had been thinking about for a while doing a documentary about American fandom of the show. I didn't have a particular angle on it, but I really wanted to do that, and I was prepping it and working on it, and then it kind of fell apart for a variety of reasons. It was just a big project that I didn't have the resources to do on my own, and I couldn't get some of the people I wanted to get, to be interviewed. And then Ross and I connected because of his work reviewing and recapping the show on what was the name of the site?
House Next Door.
The House Next Door. Yes, it was a film and television blog, right?
Yep.
And I had commented. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ross. Sorry. What?
Scholar Sites, who is now the editor of RogerEbert.com.
Yes, yeah, which is why I was reading it originally, because of his work, and then Ross was doing the Doctor Who recaps, and I was commenting on his, and so we had conversation going, and then when one of my films screened at San Antonio Film Festival, I went down for it, and Ross came and we sat in the lobby while the film was screening and talked for 2 hours, and just connected and became friends. And not long, as he recounts it, my memory always put those two events together, but he reminds me that it was sometime after that that he contacted me about the documentary and asked me to direct it. Because he had some directing experience, but not a lot, and was a fan of my work. And I was thrilled to do it, and was very excited, and had no idea it would be a 9-10 year process when we started out.
Nobody knew it would take a decade.
No, you don't start projects like that if you think it's going to take a decade. But somewhere along that
it also
process,
didn't help that we had a 2-year hiatus.
Well, no, but Ross then was such a creative force on the project that at some point I told him he really should be taking a director credit as well. And so we became co-directors officially and co-producers, and then the writing credit going to him, as he said, because he was the main creative force behind this whole idea.
Right. No, and you guys have given us a fantastic documentary. I thoroughly enjoyed it. You made me want to hang out with everybody that's in the documentary. Like you shined a light on these people as human beings, whereas the first Trekkies kind of shined the light on it, but it was a little more tongue in cheek. I think it was done in earnest, but it felt a little more tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Where this had a much more serious tone. And to come to find out that Brian, who's in the documentary, lives maybe about 20 minutes away from me, I was like, I'd totally hang out with this guy.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
When the show was reintroduced, I really wasn't paying attention because, as I said, I didn't grow up watching it as a fan. And people started asking me, "Who's your doctor?" Which seems to be the most common question of Whovians. And I had no idea what they were talking about. And my response was, "Dr. Lee, he's my general practitioner." And I was like,
"That's the normal human response to that question." Yeah.
Right. And then people looked at me as if I was insane because I didn't know what they were talking about. And so then finally somebody cleared it up for me. I was like, okay, I get it now. For people that are unfamiliar with the series itself, and you guys have both stated Baker was your doctor. For those that don't know, he's the guy with the 80-foot long scarf. Mm-hmm. What's it like trying to connect with various iterations of the character when he regenerates and it has a totally different personality and tone?
I know that for a lot of people, especially people who are kind of newer to the show, and I've noticed this happened a lot with the new series in particular. When a doctor leaves, people get fed up very easily and I'm not interested anymore. I don't care about the new person. Now, for me, when I was a teenager, I was, I got into Tom Baker, and then I started buying the books, and I found out about all the other doctors. None of that mattered to me. I wanted to see every doctor. I still, to this day, love every doctor. It takes very, very little adjusting for me personally to find and get into whoever the new doctor is. It's a very natural thing, I think, for this television series.
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say that I'm kind of similar to Ross. I probably take a little bit longer to adjust in that I feel like it's always, I saw a chart one time for Doctor Who fans reacting to the new Doctor, and it's like, I hate this guy. Of course, this is dated, but I hate this new guy. Okay, the new guy's okay. Oh, I love this new guy. What do you mean there's going to be a new Doctor? And and on and on and on with every new Doctor. And I'm never kind of, I hate this new guy, but it's always for me like, oh, this doesn't feel the same. And then it's like, okay, now and somewhere along the line something clicks, and it's like now this feels like Doctor Who again. And then then it comes time for a new one, and it's like the same thing. So I think the reason we say anybody you can ask us who is your doctor is because there's somebody who imprinted on us as fans initially, and for a lot of American fans, it's Tom Baker, because those episodes were shown more than any other. Well, he had more episodes, but that was kind of the heyday of when a lot of the TV stations bought packages. They had the Baker years, and it became immensely popular in America when Tom Baker was doing it, or immediately after, as those episodes were available. So but a doctor imprints on us and becomes our doctor, and then we compare everybody else to that.
Well, of course, person. Chris and I, we're not young men, and
hey.
there are a lot of people who have been watching Doctor Who now. They're in their 20s and 30s, and they started watching when they were kids with the new series.
Yeah,
for them, David Tennant or Matt,
your doctor, yeah,
doctors who imprinted on them. And they mean as much to them as Tom Baker means to Chris and I.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's something to be said about Doctor Who and Star Trek that Star Wars wasn't able to do. And that was to transcend time. Like, Doctor Who and Star Trek have both been around roughly 60 years.
Yeah.
And Star Wars, we had our 3 core films, and then everything that's kind of broken off, we kind of like it, but not really. And there's so much that we could turn off. Whereas with Star Trek, we've had 6 different captains. With Doctor Who, we've had 12 plus different doctors, and so on and so forth, that the series can continue on even as it morphs. Whereas it seems that Star Wars really can't do that. What speaks to the longevity of these two properties with Doctor Who and Star Trek that Star Wars somehow can't capture?
Well, I think Star Wars is a movie franchise for starters, which sets it apart from either of those other 2 properties. I don't know. It also became very dependent on the Skywalker saga, and I don't know. I'm not answering this. Chris, you want to take a stab at it?
Well, I think that
Ross doesn't want hate mail.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it, because Star Wars started out as a movie franchise, but of course, I think the problem, and this is a problem that Marvel has had too, in that they started out as one thing, movie franchises, and then branched into television, and the television and movie production processes and schedules are completely different things. So Marvel has had this issue with regard to continuity, right? In universe, like, we're producing these television shows, they're made by a separate entity, which has gone through different iterations now as Marvel Television. So they can be unified, but they're not inherently unified, just because the schedule for television is completely different than the movies, and so the movies have these long leads, and the television is being done. And I think Star Wars, it's a little different, because Star Wars doesn't necessarily have assembly line feel in terms of how many movies are going to be made. But I do think it does struggle with the continuity, the lore, and the budget for the grandness of the storytelling. So the TV shows tend to be smaller, and Marvel realized this recently and is kind of refocusing its television stuff going forward on street level, smaller, characters who are not as grand as, say, Thor, and not going to have as cosmic adventures and those kinds of things. So Star Wars obviously can't do that. But I think that Andor is a good example of what you might call a street level, version of that. Even though it's planet hopping, its environments are more urban and they don't feel like we're going to this ice planet or whatever it might be. But I think the other problem is just really that fans of Star Wars have, I don't know, I feel like the movie thing, the difference between movie storytelling and television storytelling inherently is that we expect certain things from movies that we don't in television. And when you try to cross over in a series that has been only movies for a long period of time, I just think fans have gotten more critical in this day and age. The other thing is that and this is really true for Star Trek and Doctor Who. So I don't know why Star Wars is any different, really, but it's really not. Ross will speak to this too. Fandom of all of these genre series can be very toxic at times. I'm not speaking for all fans by any means, but there's a segment of the fandom of every one of those things that we talked about that is toxic, and Star Wars in particular it can have a pretty dichotomous fandom. It breaks on like, hey, did you like or not like The Last Jedi? And then we can't be friends if you feel one way or the other about it.
Right.
And there's also a segment of the fandom that just enjoys things for what they are and also acknowledges weaknesses, but whatever, it's just I enjoy it regardless. I feel that way about Doctor Who. I mean, I've sold it to a lot of people to watch, and people have come back to me and said on the newer series, like, just the effects are pretty hokey. Like, I don't know how to feel about some of the stuff, and I'm like, hey, you have to be okay with that. If you're going to watch Doctor Who, it's going to get better at times and worse at other times, but that's just the level that, and that's, as a fandom, we just kind of accept that. But some people don't feel that way and they can't get into it. So
I have many times said that we have lost countless potential Doctor Who fans simply because they came in on the wrong episode.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
That could be my case, because the ones that I've tried, I was like, I don't get it, and I had an ex-girlfriend that tried to make me watch some of the Matt Smith stuff, and I was like, not for me.
Wow.
Yeah, Matt Smith is not it's interesting because I think my experience is colored by having been, really gotten into Tenet. That when Matt Smith came along, I was like, that was a classic. I don't like this new Doctor. I ended up having a great appreciation for what he did with it, but it took me a while to get there. And they really did reboot the whole. That was the first time that they did a soft reboot with the new Doctor, where you can join this show now and you're going to learn a lot in these first few episodes of what Doctor Who's all about. And so I think a lot of fans joined the show at that point because it was a new beginning. And now every Doctor, they kind of soft reboot it. But Smith is a very different tone than some of the other Doctors before him, and it worked for some people and not for others. So I think that's a very common point of view.
It worked for, it was
very popular.
It was never bigger in America.
Yeah.
Than it was on Matt Smith's watch.
I don't mean to say that he was controversial or unliked. I agree I knew that was the case. It became incredibly popular under him because I think it was funny when the Doctor after his name escaped me, after him, Peter Capaldi. When Capaldi became doctor, then all of a sudden there were a lot of younger female fans who were saying, "Who's this old guy? Doctor Who's supposed to be, young, handsome, and their perception of it was very different." So
Actually, Stephen Moffat rather smartly built that exact conundrum into the Peter Capaldi's first episode.
yes,
Hey, I might look like an old man, but I'm the same guy that you were for.
You mentioned toxic fandom, and I used to often joke, with the rise of the fanboy world in taking over pop culture, that it's now the geeks' turn to be the bullies. And so I used to joke about that, and then I also was joking pre-pandemic, which kind of is happening now, where the parents that finally got to go to Comic-Con, where they were little kids and their parents were into sports, and they're like, "No, I want to go to the comic convention," is now going to be turning where they're dragging their kids to the comic convention, going, "No, I want to go to the Padres game," and seeing how that's going to switch. It's going to be interesting in that dichotomy. But to see where you guys went with this documentary, let's start with the three main people that you focused on. Let's start with Sarah. Thanks to the show, she became a conservationist and a scientist, and it inspired her to go into applied sciences. For you kids today, it's called STEM. Someone was paid $12 million to change the title of Applied Sciences and give you an acronym. I wish I was that guy. So she goes into this field because of a series, and we don't quite often focus on the women that have gone into applied sciences, or again, modern term STEM. How were you able to find her and connect with her and tell her story in all of this?
Go ahead, Ross.
I found, finding people to be in this movie was a long process. We went through many different strategies, but I won't get into all of them. But to answer your question, I literally wandered around Gallifrey 1, which is the Doctor Who convention, which we actually talk about a lot in the movie, out in Los Angeles. And that particular year I was out there, I just was wandering around, going up to strangers saying, "Hey, we're making this movie. Are you an extraordinary person? Has Doctor Who changed your life in some way?" And Sarah was one of those people who kind of looked at me and said, "Yeah, this is what I do, and I do it because of Doctor Who." And I immediately was drawn to her. She had, I always kind of joke that her and all her girlfriends have this kind of just this like the cool nerdy what is it? What do you call it when you're Chris? You're a college guy. What's that word? Whenever all the women have their thing.
Their entourage?
I don't know what.
No. Like it doesn't matter. This
Requiem? I don't know what you mean. Sorry.
That's all right. Sorority.
Oh, sorority. Sorry, I didn't get that.
Her friends reminded me of like the coolest girl sorority that you ever met.
Yeah.
And I was real keen to want to capture that in the movie. Not just Sarah, but all of her friends. I just thought they were all such a dynamic group of women with so much to say. And we did. And we got that in the movie. So, I just, I always thought a scientist was an important person to get into the movie. And she just ticked all the boxes. She ticked all the boxes. And then when we started shooting, I loved her even more. Her brutal honesty about her very complicated childhood growing up. That was all really, really, I really loved what we captured there.
No, and her story was phenomenal. And then, of course, there's also Leo, who worked with a charity organization as well. And I'm sorry, Lee, thank you.
That's okay.
His time with this Morgan's Wonderland is what I was looking for. The theme park that is for anybody with a how do I put this? Not necessarily just physical disabilities, but also various aspects of inclusion for people that have various disabilities to go there and enjoy the theme park without being ostracized.
Yeah.
That was a very important touch, and Lee's story is extremely touching as well.
It is. He was. We didn't initially approach Lee to be a subject. He was a sick man, and I just knew him, and I thought, I know he always had brilliant things to say, and I said, Chris, why don't you and Dan's one of our other producers, come down and let's shoot this guy and put him in our movie somehow. And when we left his house that day, Chris said, why can't he just be our third subject? Yeah. And so then he became that. And yeah, it was it became a really important part of Indoctrinated to tell Lee's story, to tell it well, to tell it to completion. Yeah.
And his friends would constantly opine about him and how excited they were that he lit up a room. And even while he was sick, his primary worry wasn't himself, but it was, my parents are aging, who's going to take care of them? And that was really important. As we get older and we see our parents age, and especially those of us that are close to them, it's also something hard on us. So we could connect with him through that.
Yeah. Somebody says in our movie, Lee's a glorious person. Lee is a glorious person. He's the kind of person we don't see enough of in this world. I love Brian. I love Sarah so much. I think when people watch Indoctrinated, Lee is the person that they most fall in love with. Yeah. At least that's been my experience so far. And that is not to say anything, I love all three of our subjects, but there is something very, very special about Lee Hurtado. And he is absolutely a reason to watch Indoctrinated. One of the things I always say over and over, you don't have to be, and you should know this, I think, after having just watched the film. Oh, yeah. You don't have to be a Doctor Who fan to appreciate this movie. We set out to make a movie that you didn't have to be a Doctor Who fan to appreciate. That was a major, major goal of ours when we made this film.
And you succeeded quite well, because I was enthralled for an hour and a half that flew by. First of all, I'm trying to figure out how you whittled it down to an hour and a half after 10 years. And then second of all, to sit there and go, this isn't my series, but I have a great appreciation of these people and how it affected their lives. And I absolutely adore this documentary, because if the documentary wasn't good, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. And, and makes me want to see it. And now, I want to be there for the Q&A, because I think I'm hosting your Q&A for this one. Oh, great. And be a part of it on the big screen rather. I mean, I have a large screen TV, but it's different when you're in the theater with the crowd.
Yeah.
What's it like when you get that reaction?
I have not had that reaction yet on this film. Ross has been able to be at a couple of the in progress screenings we've done before this official premiere, and so that's one of the reasons I'm looking forward to this. Is as a filmmaker, I just, there's no other experience like watching it with an audience and seeing them react to it, or hearing them react to it, and then getting to talk with them afterwards. Why I love film festivals. So I'm very excited about this, but Ross can speak to the experience of showing it at some of the Doctor Who conventions in progress.
I mean, I do always, I feel like it's a little bit of a cheat to show it to a room full of Doctor Who fans.
Well, sure.
I mean, I do feel like we kind of have that in the bag. So really, this SAFilm Festival screening is going to be a big test of this movie. Yeah. And can we reach people who don't necessarily watch Doctor Who, or even maybe don't even care about Doctor Who? But to answer your question, what was it like? It was glorious. We spent 10 years making this movie, a movie that I many, many times thought, we're never going to finish this. This is never going to be done. We finished it. We showed it. People loved it. We got the most extraordinary reactions from people in both Chicago and Los Angeles at these two conventions. Except, one thing I would love to bring up, because you probably won't ask us about this, so I want to bring it up here now. When we showed the movie in Chicago, the only other member of the Indoctrinated team who was able to be there for that was our composer, Dominic Glenn. Dominic is an actual Doctor Who composer. He worked on the show back in the 1980s.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like a big score for me personally to get Dom to do this music for our film. And he was so happy to do it. And he did it in a shockingly short amount of time. I think about 5 weeks he whipped that score together, because we had to meet that deadline for Chicago. And we had finished editing the movie in August. The movie was premiering in Chicago in November. It was a rush job, but oh my God, he did such wonderful, sweeping, gorgeous work. I will put on that score at home by itself. I'll just listen to it late at night, and it takes me to so many great places. I'm so proud to have had Dominic Glenn do the score for our movie inDoctornated.
Wow. Yeah, see, I didn't know his tie to the series, so thank you for bringing that up. And that's a beautiful tie-in, not only for the fans, but for everybody that's a part of this, because you have your 3 fans that are in this, and now they get to say they've been in a film scored by a Doctor Who composer.
Let me say something. Nobody is more excited by that than Brian Uiga. Brian is, the Sylvester McCoy era, which Dom contributed heavily to, is one of Brian's favorites, as he often talks about in the movie. So for Brian to be scored by Dominic Glenn, I know that for him that is that takes him to a whole other level.
Right.
Yeah.
And Brian literally, so I'm in California. So for people around the rest of the country, in Southern California, we don't measure things by distance. We measure everything by time, because you never know how long it's going to take to get there.
We do that too.
Oh, is that what you do in Texas now too?
Still.
So, Brian, the city that he's in is about 17 miles from where I live. So without traffic, it takes about 20 minutes to get there. With traffic, it takes about 45, right? Maybe an hour. So Brian, I'll tell you this, if we ever hang out, I'm raiding your garage, because the fact that he's got some really cool stuff in there, and and I'll give only one spoiler with Brian. He also has a Herbie the Love Bug that he's built for the Star Cars. Like, my friend has Kit. My friend, I'm going to say his name, Sal Hanna, has a Kit car from Knight Rider. That was always his dream, and Sal's been a part of the same organization where they take it, to conventions and shows. And Brian's a part of that with Herbie. So Sal, you might be parked next to Herbie soon.
So you know all about Star Cars when you were watching the movie.
Yeah, because I was in my friend Flower has a Luigi, a Fiat from the 1960s Fiat from the Cars movie, and she let me ride with her when we were in the Christmas parade. So, Star Cars is fantastic, and just the fact that Brian's a part of it is great.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah. So that's my one spoiler for Brian. Brian seems like one of those people that, even though when he's going through a tough time, he's still very hopeful and jovial about it. Jovial might be the wrong word, but he's still very hopeful and, calm in the struggles. Is that how he is genuinely in person as well? Or is it just coming across that way in the documentary?
Brian is a force of nature. Brian is a force of nature. That's just all there is to it. I think we captured some of that in the movie, but when you're around Brian, he does have a tendency to take over the room. He's and I think that was, when I met him, I met Brian the same way I met Sarah, at Gallifrey 1. Actually, I take that back. He was recommended to me by a friend who's also in the movie, Jesse Merlin, who talks about Brian in the film. And Jesse had recommended Brian to me, and I went to a con that year, and I didn't see Brian the whole weekend. And it wasn't until Sunday night when I finally bumped into him. I said, "So Jesse tells me you might be a good fit for our film." And he and we just got on like a house on fire for the next 90 minutes. We talked. I just knew, I was like, okay, this is our first subject. This is the guy. By that point, we'd been searching for a year to find somebody to be in this movie. So I was so excited to be able to call up Chris when I got back home and say, "Chris, I finally found somebody. I found somebody who's going to be a great inDoctornated subject."
Right.
And for Brian being so involved in film preservation, that was also, I think, something that really spoke to Chris and I as filmmakers.
Yeah. Right. And it's huge on my heart. I love going back to the silent era. I love classic movies, and it's something that I love physical media. So if I can have a DVD of it, I want it.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think Ross and I are in the same category there. And yeah, being able to have part of the film speak about film preservation, even though the film isn't inherently about that, it is something that I think is really important. And it speaks to our belief as filmmakers that the art that we're participating in with the film itself is important to us and important, it was just a lucky stroke that, Brian being a Doctor Who fan happened to also be involved in film preservation, because we would have picked him, for a lot of reasons, not just related to what he did as a career, but the fact that he was really a nice addition.
But it also plays into so I like I said, I like documentaries and history of things sometimes more than I actually like the property. The episodes of the first, second, and third Doctor have been lost to the degradation of the film or of the tapes. And so that kind of ties in him preserving other films that he would be able to preserve some of the older Doctor Who stuff that they could still find.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also speaks to how little they thought of the show and its longevity back then as well. Sorry, go ahead.
They couldn't have guessed. They couldn't have known. They could not have known that Doctor Who would become the immense thing that it is. And they didn't. The BBC didn't see any value in rebroadcasting. Reruns were not really a big thing over there. Very few of the Doctor Who stories from the 1960s were rebroadcast. Right. It just wasn't something that was done. Once it aired, it was done. That was over. We're on to the next week and the next show and so forth and so on.
Yeah. We're going to San Antonio. It's going to be there July 23rd, a Wednesday afternoon. As I said, I'm not a Whovian, but I love the documentary. What would you like other people like myself who aren't necessarily, enjoying the property or a fan of the property, but are intrigued by the human aspect of your story to get from not only being a Whovian, but also, the human element?
Do you want to go, Russ? Or
I want you to go this time.
Okay. Well, I think that so people who are going to be interested in documentary anyway, I think that they'll find that this is a story about it's just a story about three people trying to make the world around them a better place. And primarily that's the focus. This is not inherently a story about the show. We are not interviewing people involved with the show. We are not featuring cosplayers or things like that are usually a part of movies or features pieces about fandom. It's really just about the people influenced by the show to do something or be something, and even like in some ways they're not necessarily influenced by the show itself, but it's part of a tapestry of what, as with anything, it's part of a tapestry of what makes these people who they are, and it's in some ways just about how they relate to the world. So it is really just it's a very human, you use the word humanist, and it's a very humanist story about people trying to make the world a better place in their own different ways, all linked by a common love of this show.
You guys did a fantastic job with inDoctornated, so I have to praise you for that. And Ross, please, you can have the last word on this.
I just feel like we're living in a world that is so often unkind. And I think that what inDoctornated above all else is a celebration of kindness and decency.
Yeah.
And that is what I want people to show up knowing that they're going to get for 90 minutes, is kindness and decency in a world where that is often, both of those are often in short supply.
Well, I think you nailed it, so congratulations on that.
Thank you, Art.
Thank you so much.
Where can we find the documentary online, like your website, and where can we find you on social media if we want to connect and talk with you about inDoctornated?
We've got an inDoctornated.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram under inDoctornated. Now, keep in mind, it is spelled inDoctornated, not indoctrinated. It's inDoctornated. And we're also on Blue Sky, though we haven't done quite as much on there, but we're on those 3 platforms these days.
Wonderful. Gentlemen, stick around for one moment. I want to share an anecdote with you that is not appropriate for most audiences because it's nothing dirty, but it is kind of funny and it might upset somebody. But we'll remind everybody, inDoctornated is going to be at the 31st Annual San Antonio Film Festival on Wednesday, July 23rd at 5 p.m. at the Tobin Center. Grab your tickets now. You're going to enjoy yourself. As Ross said, it's a very hopeful and cheerful documentary that will inspire people to just be better and kinder. So thank you for that, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you for such a wonderful interview.
Yes.